Hey, I'm here again with another library picture book haul. I've got, I think, 10 books here with me this week, and I'm going to go through them, starting with my least favorite and going up to my most favorite. And let's see, my least favorite this week. Pretty neutral on most of my least favorites, but most of them are kind of in the lower neutral category, I think, this week. Not a ton that I'm super loving. This one's called In My Room, A Book of Creativity and Imagination by Joe Wittick, illustrated by Christine Rusi. First of all, the main interesting thing about this book is the layout, so I'll acknowledge that. Okay, so it's got, I don't know, it's just some weird paper craft going on with the design of this book. You've got these big spongy corners here that I guess are supposed to sort of, help the book not warp its cover, because the pages have sort of a triangular shape to one side of them. So this fills that out. There's a die cut in the cover. It's kind of a hardboard cover. And then this is interesting to me. You know, there's a lot of books that have sideways text. This book has sideways, like it's not, you don't read it like this. You read it like this. And that's interesting to me, or you don't read it like this. Usually when you have a book like this, you have front cover, and you'll open it up, and you'll turn it this way, and you'll read this way. This book, I think, is the only book I've ever read where you have the front cover, and you open it up, and then you turn it this way, counterclockwise rather than clockwise, in order to read it. In addition to that, as you go through the pages, initially, it was pretty straightforward. You have just, the writing was only on one half of each page. It's just on the bottom here, so it wasn't too confusing. And then, here it is just on this side. But then it gets to this point where, and this might just be me, but the text was on the top page and the bottom page, and my brain wanted to read this one first and then this one because this is the front of the book, so this book would be first in sequence. But actually, they're supposed to be read as a full piece, so you actually start on the top here. So there's this weird kind of thing where it's like, because of the layout of this book, you're kind of reading like this page, turn the page, this page. So yeah, all over the place. Not necessarily a problem. I did have a little bit of a moment there, but I thought it was worth noting just because that's kind of the only interesting thing to me about this book, and that to me is less of a problem simply because it's boring and more of a problem because, like, wow, if you're going to do so much to make the design of this book interesting, I really would have expected the story to kind of have something to do with the design of the book. You know what I mean? I feel like you've got this big opportunity here to have the sort of like the shape of the book be part of the illustrations, almost, to like have the shape of the book be maybe symbolic or metaphorical of the content of the story, or somehow support the story in some way, or somehow affect the way that you read it in a way that strengthens the theme of the book or something. I don't know exactly. It's hard to picture what that would be, but this book kind of doesn't do that. It doesn't really have much of a story either. It's a sort of a little slice of, I don't know, it's like a thesis. No. It just is scene after scene of a kid imagining things. So just as like, this person is pretending to be underwater. Now they're pretending to get married. Now they are pretending to be a veterinarian. And that's it. There's a little bit of personality in the writing, but for the most part, it's just like, this is what we pretended, and then this is what we pretended, and this is what we pretended, and there's not a ton of personality in it to me. It's pretty straightforward, and I found that kind of dull. And I don't know, I guess in that way it's an imaginative book design. Maybe it was supposed to be on the theme of imagination, but I don't know. As far as books about imagination goes, I felt that it wasn't that imaginative. I wasn't excited or curious or anything while reading it. It was just kind of like, here's some things you could pretend. And we're not going to go into much detail about any of them. Okay, this one's called A Few Bites by, once again, I have reviewed a book by this author before, and I still don't know how to pronounce their first name. Cybele or Cybele Young? Sorry, this person. I don't know how to pronounce your name. All right, so this one has interesting pictures. They didn't super appeal to me, but they've got these black and white illustrations to start out with some fairly charming character design, and then they, as they kind of tell these stories, the stories kind of sprout into the world around them. Here you see dinosaurs and trees, and they're interacting with them and climbing away from their dinner table in order to interact with these imaginative things. I found it a little bit aesthetically unpleasing personally that they have these heavy drop shadows under all of this stuff. Kind of just, I feel like I guess it's supposed to, be because you can kind of tell that these are drawings on paper that were then cut out of the paper, and maybe the shadows, I feel that the shadows were added in afterwards. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these are actually photographs of like paper cutouts over illustrations, but it looks to me like not real shadows. I could totally be wrong here. Either way, the shadows were just so heavy that they kind of distracted me. But that's pretty personal. Anyways, the story is about a kid who doesn't want to eat his food, and I guess maybe older sibling or babysitter, can't quite remember, tells these imaginative stories like, you don't want to eat broccoli? Well, broccoli was what the dinosaurs ate in order to do all these things, so pretend that you're a dinosaur and do it. And you don't want to eat carrots? Well, carrots are what aliens use to fuel their spaceship, And the kid kind of imagines these stories and it tempts him to eat the things. And then she kind of abruptly completely gives up on the third story. Like, she's trying to come up with some story to explain why he should want to eat his ravioli, and you kind of are like, where is this going? What does this have to do with ravioli? And then she says at the end, when he finds the key, he does nothing, and I don't even know what the key is for. She just gives up on the story, and she's kind of like, her imagination has run out, and she just says, please think of the last, please finish the last few bites, but he doesn't. And then in the end, it spends like 5 pages segueing into a scene where they're playing together, which I thought was interesting. It felt like a sort of like the ending really peters out, kind of meanders away. So yeah, I don't know. Not particularly stirring or exciting. It feels more like maybe a parent would be inspired by this to try this on their own, but I feel like even most parents would be able to, well, maybe this is wishful thinking, but would be able to think of something even more exciting than this if they were to do this version. So even as an instruction booklet for parents, I don't feel it did much for me. So yeah, kind of flat. A lot of potential there that I feel is wasted. Okay, this one's called Sweety by Andrea Zwill. I don't dislike this book. This is one of those weird kid books about how it's okay to be weird, and it definitely has like a strong kind of, I don't know, like I talked about in my last video how like it's nice when there's it's okay to be weird books, but I kind of don't like that a lot of okay to be weird books just feel like they're really hammering the point over your head. This one kind of does that. It doesn't really let you come to your own conclusion about whether it's okay to be weird. It just kind of insists that it is. It's definitely not bad though. It has some nice details. She gets her weirdness from her mom and her aunt, who are seen here in their punk teen years. So that's kind of nice that she's not the only weird person in the story, that it's kind of like the family is weird. I feel like that's a good angle to have. Kind of, like the story is about like the idea that your people are out there, and being weird might actually be a good way to signal to those people that you're here too, and then you'll find each other easier. But I like that it starts from a place of the people telling her that are the other weird people in her life, that she already has her people, really. Although the story doesn't directly acknowledge that, I kind of got that from it. So it reads kind of like the thought process of a weird kid while they're processing like whether they should like stop being so weird, or whether maybe being more weird is good, or maybe whether even that comes across as too desperate. And so I don't know, there's some merit in it. The character is a naked mole rat, and the character designs are I don't know, a little Courage the Cowardly Dog style freaky, in my opinion, but I guess that's some people's bag and maybe not mine. Anyway, she needs a friend in the end, and so it's just pretty straightforward. There's some nice details about like what they do to make her weird, is mostly just that she's really into mushrooms. So, relatable. I don't know. It's fine. Not a lot to say about it, honestly. I'll shut up. Alrighty. Okay, now we have a Dan Yaccarino, not really sure, Doug Unplugs on the Farm book. I reviewed another Doug Unplugs book. This is just the same deal, but with a country theme. Doug is on a vacation with his parents, and their car runs down in the middle of the farmland, and so instead of exploring the city this time, Doug explores the countryside and learns all of these lived experience things that he wasn't able to learn from his books about things that he did learn about in his books. So once again, same review as the last time, honestly. There's nothing new to say. If you saw my last video, you saw this one. It's a book about how, you can't learn everything from the internet, so go out and live a little, but also doesn't shame you for using the internet, because you can learn a lot of things from the internet too. So in that sense, it's fine, but it's very message heavy, doesn't really have much beyond its message. The character designs are kind of cute in a, purple crayon kind of way, but very simplistic and flat in a way that doesn't, for some reason, interest me as much as Harold and Purple Crayon does, which is also simple and flat, I suppose, but man, it works with it. That book's charming, but that's off topic. Okay, this one's called Boa's Bad Birthday by Jean or Jeanne, actually. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm going to say Jean Willis and Tony Ross. I don't know. Illustrations are fine. They're, that kind of like fun, quirky style that I kind of associate with Quentin Blake a little bit, but not as messy and fun as Quentin Blake. Tony Ross, I suppose. I feel like that's a familiar name to me, but I can't think of what else he's done. The only reason this book is high on my list is because I found it, it's a subject that matters to me. I don't really particularly feel that it did a great job focusing on that subject, but I don't know, it's a subject that means something to me. So when I was a kid, I was like really, really obsessed with like one of my, for some reason, like biggest anxieties, biggest fears was when I would receive a present and it would be given to me with such heartfelt love, but it happened to be something I didn't like. It was just something so tragic to me about the feeling of knowing that somebody did this with all this love in their heart and not being able to appreciate it because I didn't like the gift. And telling yourself, especially as a child, telling yourself that that's the thought that counts doesn't always make you feel better. That's what this book is about. This boa constrictor kid receives a bunch of gifts for his birthday that he can't use because he's a snake. Piano. He doesn't have fingers. What's this? Sunglasses. He doesn't have a nose or ears. Mittens. He doesn't have hands. Hairbrush. He doesn't have hair. A soccer ball. He can't kick it. He has no feet. The ending is, I don't know, a little bit strange. He receives a dung ball from the dung beetles, and he thinks, wow, that's a terrible present because it's poop. And then it grows into a tree, which is a perfect present for him. And then it suddenly wraps up with the moral for the story. So if you ever get a present that stinks, say thank you, because it might turn out to be the best present ever. I don't like this ending. That's a cold comfort, especially considering the sudden, unrealistic aspect of, that tree. What is it, growing at night? Is it still his birthday? It grew like the next day? That's not how trees work. So I don't know. If I was a kid and I got a present that I really didn't like, and people were trying to say cheer up because maybe by the time that a tree grows you'll come to appreciate this, I'd be like, that doesn't help me feel better. I still feel sucky right now. Actually, kind of a bleh book, but it wasn't terribly told, and there was some humor in the ways that he wasn't able to use his gifts that were specific to him being a boa constrictor, so I thought that they utilized the anthropomorphized animal theme effectively in that way, and it was on a theme that I would be interested in seeing other books about, maybe not this one. All right, having trouble keeping these books in a pile. Okay. This one is called One Mean Ant, written by Arthur Yorinks and illustrated by Sergio Rozier. The art is probably my favorite thing about this book. I like the typography on the cover right off the bat. And, oh man, this is my favorite page of the book. It's just like the title page, but look at the color and the design of these plants. So much fun. So yeah, there's a lot of fun, cartoonish energy to these illustrations that I really enjoy. You really get the emotion, but the colors are also like, I feel like the brightness and design of the world is just generally appealing. Look at this weird little yellow bug here. Can you see that? I just like that little guy's face. Yeah. The writing is, I was on the fence about it. Colors are so nice. The writing is interesting, but kind of cumbersome. It's very, it feels like writing that was attempting to be naturalistic. And it doesn't always hit the mark. There's a lot of like unfinished sentences and like, what? You know, like people saying, what? Like this. Here, I'll just read some dialogue. You'll maybe get the idea. What? No water? There's no water in this stinkpot place? Asked the ant. Dollars to donuts. This must be... Oh, he didn't just say that, did he? I had to think about this. Hell, I think, is what he was going to say, and then they're reacting in shock to the word that he didn't say. I didn't pick up on this at first. I feel like a lot of readers, especially younger readers, probably wouldn't pick up on this. That makes the writing sort of like weird. It makes you want to stop and be like, what is that? What is this? It's like a little puzzle to solve instead of just being able to read the story. I don't like that. That dialogue to me seems like it relies on you getting what the artist, what the author meant, but we're only really going to get what the author meant if the author set us up to get it and wrote in an effective way that makes us get it, and the author didn't do that part. It's sort of the author just kind of assumed that we would get it in the same way that he did, is the feeling that I get, and relied on the, quote-unquote intelligence of his audience, but, the intelligence of your audience is in being able to interpret, like what you've actually put down. If you didn't put down anything, I don't think the audience can be blamed if they don't pick up on what you were thinking. So, I guess I parsed it in the end, but it was really a break in my reading rhythm, so I didn't appreciate that broken rhythm. And, there's some fun phrasing. I think that the writing is fun at some times. I mean, he was so mean, leaves would fall off trees when he walked by. He was so mean, grapes would shrivel and turn into raisins when he looked at them. That's fun. I like that kind of writing. But then it says, this mean ant was so mean that dung beetles would, well, never mind what they do, they just do it when he was around. Brothers and sisters, this ant was mean. So that bit in the middle there, it's just this kind of like, there's a lot of pauses and breaks in the writing. I don't know, it's weird. I can tell it's trying to be naturalistic, but... Hey, what do you think you're doing? Don't come near me, warned the ant. You hear me? One more step and I might bite I might bite something if you come any closer. Okay, man. What the ant exclaimed. You speak my language? How? Wait a minute. Do you have any idea where we are? What was he going to say? How what? It's not how, like, how do you know my language, I don't think, because it's how... question mark? I feel like he was going to say something and I don't get to find out what it was. That just happens a lot in this book. The middle of the book, it kind of sags a bit. There's just a lot of just the ant and the fly that he meets when he gets lost in the desert. So it's this mean ant who's so mean that he's not paying attention to where he's going and he gets lost in the desert. Meets this fly. A lot of the middle of the book is just them having dialogue for the sake of dialogue, it seems. It doesn't really move the story forward very well at all. It really is just page after page after page of the fly annoying the ant and the ant being annoyed. And then he starts digging his head in the ground for no reason for pages on end. I mean, to get away, presumably, but I don't know why it's taken him so long. He's digging for pages and pages. And there's all this focus on how you can't understand his dialogue anymore because he's underground. I couldn't understand his dialogue in the first place, so, And then he turns out he had a literal thorn in his side, and the fly picks him out, and he becomes, like, a little bit nicer, but not all the way nicer. And then they... it's just really meandering. It's all over the place. It just feels like it was completely ad-libbed by somebody who's maybe a little bit bored and didn't bother to go back and edit very much. The fly flies him out of this place after they argue about the fact that he could do that all along for about 3 pages. And then says, well, what could go wrong, stuttered the fly. And then the last page is the spider. There's 2 bugs in the spider's web, but they're all wrapped up in silk, so I don't know if they're supposed to be the bugs that we knew before, or if they're not shaped like them or anything, or if it's supposed to be that this is what they're seeing and they're gonna come up to it and it ends on a cliffhanger. I don't know. Anyways, it ends after a picture of a spider. It's a cool picture of a spider, but man, strangely written book. I guess I almost appreciate it for its individuality, but I felt a little bit weakened by it just needed a little bit more editing, just a little help. I think that kind of like, quirky, weird conversational writing style is good, but you got to make it comprehensible or else you're going to trip up your readers and that breaks the flow. Saturday is Swimming Day by Hyewon Yum. I've read books by this author before, or at least illustrated by this author. I've tried to pronounce that name before. I'm pronouncing it the same way, I think. Now, here, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I apologize if I am not. This is a very cute book, and I think that that's its main merit. First of all, This author's illustrations are always adorable. The character designs are so great. The like medium that they use complements the character design so well, and the characters' faces are always so charming. The emotions are really great. This is about a little kid that wants to, or is taking swimming classes, doesn't want to be there, gets a stomach ache from, it's kind of implied, from anxiety every time that she goes, and the teacher lets her sit out the class the first time, and then like helps her get a little bit more comfortable the second time, and then eventually she comes to be comfortable enough to do it on her own. So it's a story about that. Not too much individuality in the story per se. I think that the that's kind of a predictable arc there, but the charm comes from the illustrations, because the illustrations give a lot of life to this moment, and more so than the words, I think, really breathe a lot of believability and relatability, and like feelings of childhood memories and things that really happened into this story. I'll show you some of the illustrations that I mean. Everybody knows that feeling. Grabbing your arm like that. What else do we got here? My favorite ones are when the teacher is holding the kid. As a preschool teacher myself, I saw a huge amount of realism in the poses of the child in this book. I really, and especially the interactions between the adult and the child character. I really I've experienced some of these exact, like the body language of the child is so accurate to me, to things I've experienced in the classroom myself with kids I've actually taught. This one where she's kind of like squinching up her face as she, raises her shoulders and puts her hands between her legs. I know that emotion. I've seen that emotion. So observant of the illustrator here, or the author illustrator here, to have done that. And other moments like this moment where she grabs the teacher as they swim across the pool. I feel like I recognize that. Where's my favorite one? This one. I don't know why, but that illustration really captures just exactly the way that a teacher holds a kid, and the way that the kid holds the teacher back, and like the way that they look at each other. It's so simple, but there's just such human realism in this. So that's why I like this book. Story itself, kind of meh, but it's just elevated so much by the realism of this. You just feel like you're watching a few weeks in a child's life, and what a cool, accuracy to that. Okay, it's getting really ungainly, this giant stack of books I got. All right, this one's called What's Inside a Flower and Other Questions About Science and Nature, by Rachel Ignatovsky. What an interesting name. Okay, so this is straight up just a book that I immediately put on hold because of the cover. It was actually on order at the library, so I think it's brand new, or at least at the time of making this video. The appeal of this book is the illustrations. As a science book, it's great. It's all you could really want. I think that I'm a kid who grew up reading these books, poring over, like, the main thing that I read was I would just pore over these science books. Mine were much more, kind of like eyewitness books. I had a lot of like Japanese Time Life kids educational books. Still have them because they're so good. And, those were much more, the art styles were all over the place, or they were photographs. So it was much more focused on the information. So, as far as information goes, as far as like the readability of this goes, it didn't have as many like fascinating facts as the books that I read as a kid. I kind of feel like if I had any complaint about this book, it would be that I wish that this book had more fascinating facts to like, it's good to like lay down the foundational science here, but like add in some like weird factoids, because I think that really catches your interest and makes a good rhythm back and forth between like fascinating, important, fascinating, important, not that fascinating can't be important, of course, but anyways, these illustrations are fine, but the way that this, of course the colors are great. I love the base color of every page is this like soft yellow, but where it really shines is in the pictures of the flowers. You start seeing it here. There's this really cool thing that they have going on where a lot of the plants illustrated here are with these solid colors. Here you can see that pretty completely. All of this is done in these solid colors with no outline, but then parts of the flowers will be outlined with no inside. So you can see the flowers here on this like pea pod, for example, are the petals are just outlines, no filling, and then other parts like the pea pod itself are all filling and no outline. And the result is really cool to me. I just love that art style. It's a great choice, and the colors make it so much better. And the page color coming through the parts that are just outlines is so great, especially when it occasionally switches to this dark brown color instead of the pale cream that most of the pages are. And then the dark is what's coming through the lines here. And I don't know, I guess I can't explain it in any kind of smart way why that's so appealing to me, but it really is appealing. I think these illustrations are just so gorgeous, and I like that technique, and I kind of want to try it out myself. Kind of like only fill in parts of your drawing, or like switch, like in the same flower, have some be outlined with no fill and some with fill with no outline. Great. My favorite thing about the way that the information is told is that it kind of like it recaps in an effective way that doesn't feel repetitive to me, and that's kind of fun. So it introduces plants in a very general sense, in the sort of sense that you're already familiar with them. Like, hey, you know flowers. Come on, these are what flowers are. And starting with the stuff that you already know probably about flowers. And then it goes very detailed. The main section of the book in the center is the very high detail about the life cycle of the plant. So starting from a seed. And it zooms really close in, and this is important. The illustrations zoom really close in on each stage. So here is the roots, and it's like a big 2-page spread zoomed in on the roots. Here's the stem, you know what I mean? Zoomed in on the stem. And it goes through not only every part of the plant, but every part of the plant as it grows. So as it talks about the anatomy of the plant, it also talks about the progress of the plant's life, sort of talking about each piece of anatomy as it shows that piece of anatomy growing in order as the plant matures. And that really helps you get a conception of the life cycle of the flower, as well as the roles of each different part of the flower in the different parts of its life cycle, and how each part of the flower plays a part in a specific life cycle part of the plant. And that's really cool. There's got some stuff about animals that have relationships with plants. Even some factoids I didn't know, or I never thought about it at least. They show so many different examples of each thing that they show. Like, here's what here's what a seed is. Here's all sorts of different types of seeds. I think that's really cool. And then here, after it kind of gets through the whole life cycle, here the seeds are ready again, and here they are getting scattered, and then that's where we started out, right? So instead of being like the end, we went through the whole thing, then it immediately starts recapping itself. But this time, it shows the whole thing that the entire section of the book showed, again, but on one page. So you get to see it all zoomed out. And I feel like what a great recap that is. It helps you, I feel like it really helps you absorb the information. It doesn't spend a ton of time doing it. It goes right back over it in one page or one spread. But in doing so, it helps you kind of contextualize all of the things you just learned. It helps you review the things you just learned. I think it solidifies the knowledge that you just took in. A really effective way to zoom in on the detail and then zoom out and see the whole thing that you just learned from the macro perspective as well. Really effectively done. I don't know. I guess I've said that enough. I thought it was great. And then there's a section here that says, here are the things that we learned in this book, and it kind of recaps it again. But it does it in a really fun, playful way that did also, I don't know why exactly, but it didn't feel repetitive at all. I really appreciate this. It was super well done, and it kind of goes back to a little pithy ending about what are you going to plant in your garden? Anything you plant will be beautiful because plants make the world more beautiful. How sweet. So yeah. I thought it was well done. My only critique would be maybe put a few more fun, weird factoids in there, because those are always exciting to have. All right, this book is called Astro Girl by Ken Wilson Max. This book is super short, really quick read, super basic, but I think it's a good thing. It doesn't overstay its welcome at all, and it's really sweet and cute and effective at its goal, I think, of it's just a story about childhood ambition to be what you want to be when you grow up. In this case, an astronaut. In this case, she wants to be an astronaut because her mom's an astronaut. So there is, of course, a sort of implied feminist message specifically here about this is a girl who wants to be an astronaut and whose mom is an astronaut, right? So it's sort of a book that is speaking to girls, but I think it really does it in a way that that just feels like, my personal preferred brand of feminism, where we just, like kind of act like it's normal to be feminist, because at this point it really should be, and so it doesn't make a huge deal about like, and not boys, it's girls, you know what I mean? It just introduces these characters. It doesn't belabor the point of they're girls, they just are girls, which I think is great. It just kind of makes it feel normal, which it is, to be feminist and to be a girl and to be a girl with ambitions and to be a girl who's just like anybody else, you know what I mean? That's just normal. That's how this book presents it. So the structure of the book is that this girl talks to her dad mostly about her dad saying kind of like all of the things that actually it's her papa, which I like because that's what I call my dad. Her papa is talking about all the different things that she's going to need to know if she's going to be an astronaut, and they kind of relate each thing back to something that's actually relevant to a child's life, which what a great concept. They illustrate it so simply with just a few examples, and then they end the book, and I just love it. You're going to have to go round and round the earth, and he swung her around in circles, so she knows that she can handle that. You're going to have to eat food out of a tube, and she eats her energy bar out of a wrapper, so she knows that she can do that. You'll have to get used to zero gravity, and he throws her up in the air, and she's like, I can do that too. Every interaction that are basic, child relevant interactions proves that she's going to be able to do these things when she grows up. What a great way to communicate this message. It's really unique. It has a unique perspective and voice, but it makes sense, and it connects to the reader in a super straightforward way, and it makes its point so clear, and I love it. It continues in that vein. And then in the end, she gets to hug her mom, who is an astronaut and is her hero. How sweet. So, yeah, really charming book. A little info in the back about female astronauts, including my personal favorite astronaut ever, Mae Jemison. And, yeah, what a great little book. Super short, and a really good example of a book being only as long as it needs to be, I feel. All right, this last one is The Boring Book by Shinsuke Yoshitake. It's the second book that I've reviewed by this author. It is, once again, a book that I have gotten from the library before, and I keep getting from the library because I love it, and I love everything this guy has done that I've read, and I have seen in my local Kinokuniya that there's a lot more books that this guy has written. They're all in Japanese in Kinokuniya, and I'm not good enough at reading Japanese quite yet to be able to read them, so I hope that they've been translated, and I'm going to be looking into that soon, because, man, this guy hasn't been able to do any wrong by me yet. Love this book. A lot of what I love about this book is the illustrations. There's a lot of simplistic images against a white background, and the colors are very limited to these primary or bright, mostly primary colors, in a way that I think is really graphically strong and interesting to look at. I love these red arrows as the kid shifts around. There's this drawing illustrates the color philosophy of this so well, and it's so bright and fun to look at. There's also a lot of humor, as there is in most of his books. There's a lot of humor, but I'm going to show you this page because it's the funniest one. He says, maybe it's boring when things don't go as planned. And then here he is. Look at the face of this kid as he thinks about what he wanted to make, and his teacher says, I see. A hippo. It just makes me laugh. Everything he does makes me laugh. There's a laugh in every book I've read by him. So I read this book aloud to a bunch of kids at my work at the preschool, and they did not like this book. It is called The Boring Book. Maybe I shouldn't have told them the title. Maybe it primed them to be disappointed. They were bored by it. So maybe this is more of a book for adults, but that doesn't make it bad. I think it's still good. What this book is it's not much of a story, but it's more of a sort of a act of meditation upon the concept of boredom. So this kid is bored, and a lot of the time I don't like books that start out with so-and-so was bored, because usually they just end up being, in my mind, sort of like half-hearted Alice in Wonderland wannabes, where the kid is bored and then they kind of discover the world of their imagination, and it's usually this kind of linear but meandering storylines that kind of just introduce the concept of imagination without being particularly exciting to me. That's been my experience. I don't know why that's a pattern, but it seems to be. This is a book that goes a whole different tact. The kid is bored, and then he just starts thinking about boredom. He doesn't end up doing anything. He just thinks about it. he asks himself all these questions about what boredom is, what is fun, you know? And there's a lot of interesting questions here. What if I constantly changed how I sit? Hey, this is kind of fun. Only kind of. Maybe it's fun to be unique. A park like this looks fun, but a park like this is boring. Maybe it's fun when things are crowded. Maybe it's boring when things have nothing to do with you. Maybe it's boring when things don't go as planned. And then there's all these examples of all these different thoughts. And it's really just like more of a book about brainstorming than about boredom, but it's brainstorming on boredom. I love these kind of illustrations, little tiny, like, I don't know, like little items on a otherwise blank page is a really appealing look to me. And with these colors, it's just so great. And with the variety of images, it's got that Richard Scarry, busy little world kind of vibe that I just have always loved. There's a lot of these. Here's some of the humor back in here. I wonder what the world's most boring amusement park is like. And then there's all these like really humorous riffing on like what a boring amusement park would look like. I like this part of especially where the characters are all tired. The drinks are lukewarm. The haunted house isn't scary. The roller coaster is slow. And then here he is laughing at his own imagination of the roller coaster or the theme park that's boring. It's I find that so charming. And then he asks kind of weirder questions that are kind of interesting to me. Who came up with the word boring anyway? Was that person bored? Is it fun when 300 bored people get together, or is it 300 times more boring? So, yeah, interesting questions, I thought. And there's lots of those. Grandpa was having a lot of fun talking about his boring past experiences. Maybe boring things turn into fun things after a while. Yeah, so, I don't know. I thought it was a really interesting, unique book. It's got so much humor in it. The images are charming. I'm so excited to read more of this guy's books, and I hope you'll check that one out because I really can't do it justice. I think it's a fun book to read, so you should check that out. All right, or not. You know, you do you. Okay, well, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace. Bye.